Thank you very much. Technology and low emission minerals. I'm pleased to say that I'm in the right place to present Hexagon's graphite business in the context of both technology, and you can see the graph with, and you can see the graph with respect to the technology of electric vehicles and a tremendous growth forecast for natural graphite feeding into that battery story. But then in the more traditional industrial uses, highlighting here synthetic graphite demand in industrial uses such as ultra-high powered electrodes, but with some addition of natural graphite, our natural graphite, arguing that that would lower emissions by lowering energy costs into these furnace technologies. And that's the basic theme of the story I'd like to present. So having established that I'm in the right place, I'd just like to thank Doug, Stu and Prue for the opportunity. And as I skip through this reasonably rapidly, you're very welcome to meet with myself and our team that's here in booth number 7. So the key value drivers that we see in Hexagon Resources really start around our Mcintosh project, which we've now funded through a joint venture with Mineral Resources. A fundamental precept is the very high quality or high purity that we're able to achieve, and that enables us to access very diverse downstream markets. And underpinning all of that is, I think, an experienced management team, not only in terms of technical aspects, and we have access to over 60 years of direct graphite technical experience, both upstream and downstream. Surely not my time yet. No problem. So, and that's quite unique because it is, I'm nearly an 18-month-old veteran of the graphite industry, and from a technical sense, it's quite difficult to find one's feet. But when you're supported by a team that, as I said, brings over 60 years of direct technical experience in terms of the technical aspects of graphite and the commercialisation, that's a tremendous strength. So what we'd like to think in Hexagon is that we're able to understand the graphite markets and then look upstream in terms of what we can do to meet the requirements of those markets. And that's, again, going to play out through the rest of this discussion. So our strategy is to become a vertically integrated advanced materials business. We're going to focus on graphite, and as I've tried to highlight, there's a really diverse range of end markets for graphite, both exposed to technology as well as more industrial, traditional industrial uses. But obviously the technology in batteries is sexy, it's topical, and it gets you invitations to events like this. So we're focused on the strategy of understanding the market, and we're also focused on the fastest and most sustainable path to cash flow. Quick snapshot of Hexagon. We're listed on the ASX. We have about 300 million shares on issue. We have a market cap of $50 million. Our share register is around 25% institutional, dominated by a 12% shareholding from the Tribeca Natural Resources Fund. We've heard their name mentioned several times today. They're really active in this technology materials space. So the way we organise our business is really to align it to the graphite supply chain. And so you can see that what we have here is we focused on source. That's where our material comes from. Our refining, and this is a key attribute of our business strategy, product development into one of 3 downstream lines, and the marketing of the material. And I would point out we also have some non-core assets, gold-based metals project, and if anyone's interested, see us at the booth. So with respect to source, it's really about having the right material in the ground. It's critical in terms of being able to effectively compete in high-quality markets. We think the Mcintosh Project is that because it has a very clean mineralogy, it's large scale, which is attractive to customers, and we have it funded through to commercial production. We're also evaluating other opportunities which we think have the same technical attributes. So here's the Kimberley region of Western Australia. This is an established mining region. We have the Port of Wyndham, we have the highway running through, and we have the Mcintosh Project located here. We have a resource that's reported in accordance with the JORC code of around 20 million tonnes. It's underpinned by a very large exploration target you can see on the screen there. up to 220 million tonnes. Now that's not the largest resource in the world, but we have focused our funds not on drilling, not with a mining hat on, but with an industrial minerals marketing hat on. So we've focused our funds in the laboratory, doing test work, making sure we understand what the customer wants and that we can meet those technical specifications. That's a bit of a view of the project, gently undulating terrain to the Kimberley, and what we think this project would look like. It would be a fairly straightforward multi-open pit operation, mining at around 2.4 million tonnes a year to generate 100,000 tonnes of concentrate, probably across 3 flake size ranges, utilising standard flotation technology and then likely shipping out through the port of Wyndham. So we're kind of unique. We have a partner, Mineral Resources, who are funding every step of this development right through to commercial production. There's some really important takeaways there. We funded this project at the project level, not at the equity level. Our shareholders are not exposed to ramp-up issues, negative news, in the wake of which we then have to come back with our hand out looking to raise additional funds. We don't have any. We've also reduced the operational risks. Obviously, Mineral Resources is a very experienced mine operator, and they're familiar with the technologies that we're looking to employ here. And we don't have any third-party project debt or cute convertible notes or securities or anything like that. This is a really simple project financing where we financed at the project level. Mineral Resources funds everything to commercial production for a 51% share. So what do? Well, we're absolutely focused on the downstream to be able to ride the multiples and value as you take the graphite concentrates and undertake additional processing. But just take a quick step back. We've just finished a really major drilling program on the project, and I talked before about a very large exploration target that underpins the scale of our project. Well, in that drilling program, the exploration targets are based on geophysical anomalies. Surprisingly enough, graphite's highly conductive, so it lights up very brightly. We've never drilled some of these targets. Our first drill hole into the Mahi Mahi prospect, we hit 90 metres from surface of graphite mineralisation. So that's a pretty strong verification of the strength of that exploration target and how over time we will convert that into additional project life. So when people are looking at our project, and they don't care about the grade, and they don't care about the scale of the resource as in detail. It's relevant, but it's not the key issue. They're interested in a variety of technical attributes, and purity, I would say, is one of the highest. As we go into more and more advanced technical applications, people are looking to reduce technical risk. They don't want your phone blowing up in an aeroplane or catching fire. And one of the key ways to reduce this technical risk is to have the highest possible purity material going into your battery or your device. We can achieve 5 nines purity at low cost, and this is a key platform of our strategy. We also have a large flake endowment, which was previously unrecognised simply because the strategy at that time was to go solely towards battery anode material. Well, when new management came on board, we took a step back, took a wider view. What can our project do? Can we get a diversity of products in here? And as we did the detailed analytical size work, we have a large endowment, over 70% of what's called large jumbo and super jumbo flake. And that's important because that, again, gives us versatility and diversity. Another attribute of the larger flake graphite is whether or not it can expand. If the graphite can expand, it can be utilised for things like fire retardants. It can also be used in high-end electronics in certain components of batteries. So our graphite expands, so that's another diversity. And perhaps almost as important as purity, we were very fortunate to secure what's called beam time at a very sophisticated XRD machine owned by the American Department of Energy. And what that told us is that our material is described as highly ordered pyrolytic graphite. Now that's quite rare, and it means that the crystal spacing and dimensions are of a very high quality. And what that enables us to do is compete with synthetic graphite. I made the comment at the outset of the discussion that we're looking to displace synthetic graphite in electrodes, as an example. It's this very high crystallinity that enables us to do this work and make those and put those things into our business strategy. So how does all that come together? It comes together with what we call the upstream and the downstream. Here we are upstream, we're at the mine, we're at our concentrator plant. We're throwing off 3 types of concentrate material defined by 3 different flake sizes, and we're focused on broadly 3 customer groups. Customers in the expanded line looking to make foils and sheeting and thermal management systems out of the larger flake material. What we're calling the electrode line, where we're focusing on that displacement of synthetic graphite and other high-end industrial uses. And then our battery line. Whilst it's only 20% of our planned production, it's what gets me into the door of this conference. But that's another high growth line. So let's have a look at refining. This is a key distinguishing feature of our business strategy. I would argue that we have a really strong cost advantage because our material is easy to purify. This is an example of how that ability to purify manifests in our business case. If you take a traditional Chinese flow sheet, for example, in battery materials, they spherodize or shape first and then purify. And so if they're getting about a 30 to 50% yield of material into the spherical, they've got about 50 to 70% of waste because that material is still low grade and of low value. In our particular case, we're looking to purify first because we can, because our cost for purification is less than what it costs the Chinese to purify using HF, hydrofluoric acid. And then once we finish spherodizing, we have one high value material that goes into the battery anodes, and we have another high value material at 5 nines total carbon that can be used for another purpose, possibly the cathode side of the battery. So we're effectively getting 100% yield of our concentrate material. It's a really important aspect. Now, in terms of product development, our versatility in this regard comes from purity, our large flake, and our easy milling. Everybody's always talking about large flake, I've got the biggest flake, etc., etc. Well, there's an increasing demand. Well, that's important, but there is an increasing demand for very fine, highly crystalline material of sort of 5 to 10 microns that are used in electronics and a range of industrial applications, and that's an area where we also want to go because of the easy milling characteristics. That's the flow sheet for our downstream business. Again, looking at the different lines. And the way we'd plan to commercialise this is that will be a process of first selling concentrates, then transitioning into a refined raw material that's been through our purification, and then looking to prioritise those products with the shortest qualification periods. People are constantly underestimating this issue of qualification. And I have to apologise, I'm running out of time. So just a quick look at marketing. So we've got these aspects in terms of purity, crystallinity and large flake morphology that really underpin the marketing strategy, but there are other important aspects of marketing. China dominates the flake business, and people are, as we've heard about other commodities, are looking to diversify away from China. If you look at the alternative markets here, this political risk map put out by Marsh sort of shows the hot red colours in Africa and places, and then transcending into those lovely cool low risk colours of Australia. And so people aren't taking on, if they're buying material from Australia, they're avoiding the sovereign risk issues and also the brand risk issues when you compare the environmental and the OH&S standards that we employ in Western Australia. In terms of pricing, I've tried here to sum up what our basket price is. It's around $1,500 US a tonne. If I take the number of our concentrates, about 50,000 that we'll get out of the joint venture, and I use the somewhat embarrassing operating costs that we generated from our pre-feasibility of about $1,000 a tonne, you can see an EBITDA margin there of just over $1,000 Aussie a tonne. Do the maths, it gives you an idea of the valuations. We have a feasibility study in progress at the moment. MinRes are doing it, and we expect those numbers to come down. And this just gives you an example of why are we going downstream. Well, the reason is because the valuation or the multiple uplifts are really significant. They're something like 5 to 20 times. You've got materials here that are selling for something from $6,000 to over $20,000 a tonne. This is our timelines. In the blue, we're showing what our upstream timelines are. With mineral resources, in our agreement, we have contracted time frames within which to complete. And within that time frame, which we're all looking to beat, but let's be conservative, we'll be in production in around about 2 years' time in terms of concentrate production. And then we'll also plan to have steady news flow coming out of our own downstream test work, where we're about to lock in access to refining facilities and furnaces, so that we'll be able to demonstrate to investors, but also to our customers, the merits of our material. So really, we're about an upstream project that's funded with an excellent partner. We're focused on the downstream. We have this deposit that enables us to create extremely high purity materials. That's a key risk mitigation for people that want to buy our material. And you're very welcome to hear more from our booth. Thank you.